For as long as any of us alive today can remember, we've depended on news media to deliver accurate, well-presented, and reasonable analysis of current events and the moving parts that shape them.
Dr. Martin Luther King, the apostle of nonviolence in the civil rights movement, has been shot to death in Memphis, Tennessee.
We've become accustomed to the news holding the people in power accountable, or at least purporting to. There's a general adversarial relationship between the news and public officials, and there's no better example than with the president.
Barack Obama, you wicked, wicked devil!
Even knowing that, one still might find themselves a little surprised with just how wild it got with a certain recent president. Yep, Donald Trump. No matter how you feel about him, there's definitely something special about his presence as a public figure since he ran for president. This clip I'm about to play should demonstrate two things. Trump is both very abrasive and very popular.
This is a tough business to run for president.
I know, you're a tough guy, Jeb.
And we need to have a leader that is principled.
Tough.
You're never going to be president of the United States by insulting your way to the presidency.
Let's see, I'm at 42 and you're at 3, so far I'm doing better.
Doesn't matter.
As his presidency and two campaigns were extremely controversial, it's no surprise that the media, particularly the moderate and left-wing media, sought to bring him to task for his conduct. But did they miss the mark? It's called TDS. You may have heard of it before. Trump Derangement Syndrome. The term has its origins in the phrase Bush Derangement Syndrome, coined by the late columnist Charles Krauthammer, and then Obama Derangement Syndrome, and finally, Trump. The idea is that people, especially the media, have become hysterical in their disdain for Trump, to the point where it severely impedes their judgment. A proponent of the term might say that many criticisms of Trump are irrational, not based on tangible actions or policy, but instead a series of easy-to-remember memes. And when I use the neologism meme, I mean it in both a Dawkins way and a Doge way. A phenomenon like TDS may be hard to prove empirically, but it does bring up a real question. Is there something wrong with the way the media has addressed Donald Trump? Interestingly, many people, including people who are critical of Trump, would say, yes. Boston University professor Toby Berkovitz is quoted as saying, "The problem with the media is that the voters who support Trump hold the media in contempt. So for the media to try to pound the Donald just reinforces the idea that Trump is correct and is the hero for a lot of people who are dissatisfied." Jon Stewart had harsh words for the media for their coverage of the recent Trump trial.
It's irresponsible for cable news networks to give Donald Trump hours and hours of free airtime.
Way too much speculation and liberal wishful thinking and attempts to connect dots that did not connect.
It's the media's responsibility to not get distracted.
I think we were much too busy chasing after shiny objects.
All of us have learned some very valuable lessons from the last couple of years in delineating what's significant, what's important.
So brave.
And then, of course, there's a plethora of more conservative people who will make it clear that they believe the media is being unfair to Trump.
Wow, so the failing New York Times is 40%, the Washington Post 46%. I mean, so it's confirming what he has felt in his gut, that most of what he's getting is not fair.
It might be possible that the media, particularly those that have historically been critical of Trump, have contributed to his rise. And even beyond that, perhaps they have simply been out of order in their criticisms of him. I'll explore these ideas with data, quotes, and facts, and use my own understanding of the topic to provide thoughts or theories on what's going on. One good source is Ballotpedia's research from late 2015. To explore how the media was covering Trump, 250 articles covering the first campaign from June 22nd to September 22nd of that year were collected for analysis. The author noted that rather than analysis of policy, reporting on Trump often focused on his character, controversial statements about issues, and his actions on the campaign trail. This shouldn't be taken as fully damning for the media, though, as the author explained that, at least when this was written, Trump rarely delivered detailed policy speeches and had no voting record or policy platform from a previous political position. Here's the top 10 most covered issues, and let's look at some of the useful data in this article. On immigration, we can see the splintering between the media and Trump's base start to form. This was the most popular issue in the study. When we look at immigration, we see his comments on Mexico, where the main focus of an article, were mentioned more than his immigration policy. Trump's comments on Mexico and his speech announcing his campaign were extremely controversial, and most of the articles characterized him as referring to all immigrants.
They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, and some, I assume, are good people.
But Trump voters did not feel the same way. In an interview with CNN, one said, "He didn't say Mexicans, he said Mexico. His point was that Mexico is outmaneuvering America, and they are outmaneuvering us. I don't believe this disparity is necessarily because of bias against Trump. This was quite early, before any sort of derangement should have developed. Media often form stereotypes of candidates early and stick to them, but this was before Trump gained most of his reputation, so I don't think it was about stereotypes. The problem was likely in Trump's wording. David Weigel wrote for the Washington Post, Trump's tangled syntax made it sound like he said literally everyone coming across the border was a rapist, which was not what he meant. I remember when I first heard Trump's words, I interpreted them as meaning almost all the immigrants coming across the border were bad, and maybe some of them were good. I wouldn't think that was TDS. Looking at the rest of the research, we can see the media was fascinated with things like Trump's character, his relationship with the media, his feuds and insults, his comments on John McCain, his responses to a question about Muslims, and even his hair. We can see that Trump certainly had a unique body of coverage around him, and this is only from 2015. It might be too early to properly articulate an actual systemic problem, but remember, this isn't the end. Trump won the presidency in 2016. He ran a real race in 2020, and he's the presumptive nominee for the Republicans in 2024. Since then, the relationship between him and the media has only gotten crazier. I mean, this was back when Trump could plausibly appear on SNL instead of being played by an impersonator.
You used to call me on the cell phone.
As is said in the textbook, there's difficulty in recognizing partisan media bias. No one would be shocked to hear that a lot of media is negative about Trump, and I don't even know how I would prove if it's usually justified or not. But looking past negativity, which is often observed to be favored by media in general, the truth is that the sheer bulk of the media's focus on him is stunning. Beyond general newsworthiness, why is he so prevalent? Thomas E. Patterson once said, Trump is arguably the first bona fide media-created presidential nominee. Although he subsequently tapped a political nerve, journalists fueled his launch. Listen to journalist and author Matt Taibbi talk about the decision the media made after Trump won the nomination in 2016.
Or once he locked up the nomination, now there were all these conversations. What do we do? Do we continue taking the money? Do we continue bringing in all these ratings? How do we deal with this? Are we responsible for giving him all this attention? Were we responsible for helping him win the nomination? And is there, going forward, should we cover him less? What should we do? And the answer that most news companies settled on was actually to cover him more than they had before, but to change their editorial approach and to just simply add more editorializing and more negative slant. So this was presented as an ethical change. Jim Rutenberg of the New York Times in the summer of 2016 wrote a piece.
In the general election, Trump commanded 3 times the coverage of Hillary Clinton. In the 2020 election, the right-leaning channel Fox News' ratio of aired Trump to Biden statements approached 60-40, while the broadcast channel CBS had a ratio closer to 70-30. Trump had 4 times the coverage of Biden on CBS and 3 times as much on Fox. What causes all this? I believe it's a combination of a genuine adversarial relationship between Trump and the press, which was mostly initiated by the former president, and the sheer lucrativeness of covering him. On one hand, many journalists feel that Trump is a legitimate threat to America as a functioning democracy, and on the other hand, to them he's a real boon to journalism. Leslie Moonves once said about his first candidacy, "It may not be good for America, but it's damn good for CBS." Trump has likely known throughout his 2 campaigns and his presidency that he could trap his detractors. They give him publicity, while the extent to which they criticize him supports the narrative that he is being unfairly persecuted. He knows they kinda need him. I don't think he really hates the press, at least not in the way you would expect, say, a dictator to hate them. It's a rivalry that perhaps only he would have the skill to foment on account of his decades of experience in publicity. George Packer describes the press as repeatedly falling into Donald Trump's traps in his article warning of the consequences of a second Trump term. The relationship between Donald Trump and the news media has always been a little disingenuous, like a pair of fighters trading insults and throwing air punches at a weigh-in. The hostility is real, but the performance benefits both sides. I wish I could read the whole article, but it's paywalled. For a bit of perspective, Trump predicted that news ratings would tank if he left office. And he was right. I don't make a habit of coining things, but I think it's time to propose a new TDS. I call it Trump dependency syndrome. Like a drug, the media relies on him, but they're aware it's unhealthy. As they lose credibility, he gets the best part of the deal. And what happens when they can't get him anymore? I mean, he can't run forever. He can't live forever. Who will take Trump's place? Who can?